Israeli occupation of West Bank and Gaza, global warming, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, a right to choose, national health insurance. It goes on and on and on, simply saying they're both the same. We've had Alex Jones already saying that, but Alex, back to you if you have any more comments on whether or not the Democrats, Republicans are the same.
I have a lot of comments. At the end of the last segment, I was unable to finish what I was saying, so I'd like to finish that, but that dovetails, that connects in to your latest question. You know, both your guests are admitting that we're seeing continuity. You know, whether John McCain gets in or whether Barack Obama gets in, you're going to see continuity, and that's because the big multinational corporations, the globalists, who openly, own both the major parties, are in control of both of these men. And until the 1990s, you could get a third party in the debates. You could get other parties in the debates, and then the people could make a choice watching the presidential debates. That's why you had Ross Perot getting close to 30%. Since then, this private corporation, the Debate Commission, at the pressure from the Republican and Democrats, has closed the debates. And so we need to have larger debates. The first debate should have 5, 6, 7, 8 different candidates. They should be real debates, not just questions and answers. You have the mainstream media here in the United States gives almost no attention to third parties or alternative parties, especially if they have any clout. And so we have a constriction in the amount of choices the public has by the controlled corporate press, that's owned by the same banks and bomb makers that own the two major parties. And so that's the issue we're dealing here with. And Barack Obama is only different from John McCain and George Bush cosmetically, and that's why Wall Street's giving him more money than anybody else, because they believe he can neutralize the left to support these wars. He's talked about needing to have conflicts with Russia. He came out against Russia with what happened in Georgia, when Georgia, it's now admitted, and the State Department admits, snuck attacked the Russian held area of Ossetia and Abkhazia. We have all of this going on, and we have Barack Obama, no different from Bush when it comes to the banker takeover bill known as the bailout. So the point I'm making here is Congress has an 11% approval rating. Now, in fact, that was a few months ago. Now it's a 9% approval rating, the lowest in U.S. history. I go back to that point. I'd like to hear your guests speak to this. The reason they have the lowest approval rating in history in the United States is because the people have figured out that both parties are controlled by the same interest.
Right.
They just hate George Bush so much that they're giving Barack Obama a chance. And I'm telling you... Go ahead.
Let's put the question across to Wayne Slater. Wayne, of course, the only body less popular than the president right now in the U.S. happens to be the Congress. So does that mean that the Americans are right now aware of the fact that Democrats and Republicans, as Alex suggests, simply are no different, and they're not the ones they want in office?
That's part of it. I think that there are not distinct differences between the party. Both candidates tend to, in this race, have tended to run toward the center. But instead of being a recognition, as Alex suggests, by the American public that they're owned by corporations or the corporate global elite, I think it's more the fact that Americans are simply not happy with their political institutions at all because they didn't do anything. They basically have become more polarized. The institutions of government, the way we elect people, the shape of our districts, producing different candidates and different office holders, and the rest of it has invited a kind of polarized gridlock, deadlock in places like Washington, where you have, certainly under George W. Bush, a polarized environment where very little gets done. There's not a sense of compromise. There's a sense of my way or the highway. And for normal Americans who are looking at their savings at home or looking whether they can pay their mortgage or they want to send their kids to college, and they watch these guys up in Washington, whether it's in the White House or in Congress, simply having such difficulty solving problems, that, I think, is more than anything else what has contributed to the low approval rating.
Let us also take a look at the so-called third party. Why is it just blue and red? How would you explain the Electoral College? Now, people voting November the 4th, but the real votes for president cast on December 15th, when 538 people decide at the end of the day. Canadian press goes off to Electoral College how Americans choose a new president. Current.com goes, Electoral College, our ballots should matter more. Forbes goes, the Electoral College, why Obama and McCain probably don't care about you, that means the voters. And we have another headline, popular vote versus Electoral College. This, of course, back in 2000 was quite notorious. So the electoral system in the U.S., is that really democratic?
I would like to comment. Go ahead.
I'll get back to you, Alex. Let's have Wayne in this, and then I'll get back.
Very, very briefly, it is democratic in a sort of small way, but you're right. Institutionally, it works against the interests of a truly vigorous, different approach, which a third-party candidate has to do. And as Alex said, the most recent example of a vigorous third-party challenge, Ross Perot, happened because he was offering something truly different from the other two.
Yeah.
We saw Teddy Roosevelt a century ago who was offering something really different. In neither case did they win. But the institutions, I think Alex is right, the institution, the mechanisms of the way we do it, including the Electoral College, which has been with us for a long time, does militate against the advantage of a third, more inventive, vigorous, interested, and different approach to our governance.
All right, now a challenge for Alex to hold us by just a few seconds while I go to London. Dr. Boyd, I'd like to have your take on the democratic nature of U.S. electoral system.
Thanks very much. I'd like to come back actually to what Alex was saying, because I think there is a popular misunderstanding about the American political system. We talk about two parties, but I think you can make a very valiant claim that there are actually 50 parties, because the national party system in the United States is very, very different than it is here in England, for example. People are much more powerful at a local state level,
yes.
Which allows someone like Barack Obama to come forward and to defeat the sort of like the candidate of choice for the party, which would have been Hillary Clinton, for example. I'd also pull issue with this idea that third parties are not important in American politics. As Wayne rightly points out, we can think about the progressive movement, the Bull Moose Party of Theodore Roosevelt in the 20s. We can come forward to think about the Dixiecrats in the 40s. Alex talks about this idea that only until the 1990s could you have a party of a third party coming through to challenge. But Ross Perot, of course, actually challenged in the 1990s. And if Alex is worried about the influence of big money in American politics, well, the only reason that Ross Perot was able to stage his remarkable third-party success, in which he achieved 19% of the electoral popular vote in 1992, was because he was a billionaire. So if Alex is worried about big money in America, I think Ross Perot is an interesting and perhaps contradictory choice to hold up as an example.
No, let me counter that. What I'm saying, that's a misrepresentation. I was talking about the last time there was a true, strong third-party challenge. I wasn't discussing Ross Perot's money or how Ross Perot got into that position. I was talking about the attempts since then to further freeze third-party candidates and parties out of the larger discussion and out of the media, and a circling of the wagons by the two-party dictatorship that we have in this country. Now, let me just be clear here. The American people, it isn't that nothing's being done in Washington. Thousands of pieces of legislation are being passed, okay, at the state and federal level. The people are frustrated because 91% in every major Gallup poll want to control the border. Both parties say no because the corporations want cheap labor and to drive down the wages. The American people, 75% or higher, don't want these wars, but both parties are still for it and still push it. On issue after issue, the Congress only has a 9% approval rating because the people understand that special interests are in control of the process more and more. They've always been there, but more and more that's happening. So that's why this country's moving towards revolution. That's why the Army Times reported they have Northcom, regular Army brigades, pull it up for yourself on Google, ready to, quote, deal with American insurrection. Because the American people understand that both parties are controlled. And you're right, they're hoping Barack Obama will do something different. They're hoping that it's all just rhetoric, that he's basically going to be lockstep with what George Bush did, because George Bush was lockstep with what the last president did, because it's a military-industrial complex that is using America as the engine of world government and the engine of empire for the Anglo-American establishment. So that's what we're dealing with here. And so instead of just talking about the horse race Barack Obama and, of course, John McCain, the supposed maverick. I'm pointing out that it's like a Don King boxing match where he owns both the fighters, or it's like a horse race where all 10 of the horses are owned by the same person. They're going to end up winning. I'm saying our system fundamentally is breaking down and is corrupt, and we need gridlock in Congress. By the way, on the subject of the Electoral College, I'm all for it. Why am I for it? Our senators, until the 17th Amendment in 1913, were appointed by the state. They were appointed by the legislatures because the senators were creatures of the state, so you couldn't have an all-powerful federal dictatorship. And so now our popular vote is counted at the state level, and then it goes up for the number of electoral votes that state has representing its congressional districts. And then, and they've never gone against this, the Congress then goes with the popular vote. So it's the same system of state power, and that's what we're dealing with here, and that's why I am against a, quote, popular vote, because that allows more federalization and more control. Imagine if our senators were still creatures of the states.